Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hangar Bar. Super excited to have you here. Today's episode is going to be fantastic. But Candice, let's start off. What are we drinking tonight? What do you got?
So I am drinking a peach Crown Royal with Sprite.
That sounds like something I would absolutely despise.
Yes.
Way too sweet for me.
Yes.
I am drinking a pour of still Austin bourbon on the rocks tonight in a very special glass. It's not a Disney glass. It was my dad's martini glass growing up. So it's kind of I'm just loving it all tonight as we record this
Heading
one.
down the nostalgia trail.
That's right. So this week's episode, we have a special guest back with us, and super excited to have him here.
Absolutely.
And the question that I have for you today, Candice, is what is your favorite Imagineering detail?
Oh, goodness. Where do we begin? Because there are so many. But I think one of the biggest things, and I think something that a lot of people overlook, as they do with many of the details, which we've talked about before on the podcast, is how if you truly pay attention, everything changes. As you move through a Disney park or on a Disney cruise ship or anything, as you move from one area to the other, everything changes, from landscaping to architecture style to the ground to the ambient music to lighting to everything. And I think putting that much thought into something and formulating those kind of details are just amazing.
Yeah. I'm going to go more specific than that. But yeah, I completely agree. You have to pay attention to all the details because the Imagineers do everything on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite Imagineering detail actually comes from a land that is not my favorite land.
Oh, okay.
The floating mountains in Pandora.
Stunning.
That Joe Rohde imagined up and dreamt up are some of my favorite architectural marvels of any theme park experience anywhere. It's just amazing because even if you look and study it, it's hard to tell how they're grounded.
Mm-hmm.
They are floating mountains in Pandora. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So as we get ready to jump into this episode, sit back, enjoy. This is gonna be a great conversation with our friend Theron Skees. Hey, welcome to Hangin' at the Hangar Bar. I'm Scott.
And I'm Candice. We're here to chat all things Disney as child-free Disney adults. Stories, snacks, and a little magic along the way.
Grab a drink and get comfy and come hang out with us. Okay, welcome to the Hangar Bar, everyone, or welcome back to the Hangar Bar if you've been with us for a while. Super exciting episode today as we start our 5th season of Hangin' at the Hangar Bar podcast, which is just crazy to think that coming out of the pandemic, we were thinking we just wanted some way to talk to friends about Disney, and this turned into something that we never could have imagined.
Not in a million years.
One of the things that we sort of started with is like one of the things that we have trouble just imagining is some of the guests we have on our show. And today we have a guest that's been on before, a friend of the show, but we're excited to have Theron Skees back, who is going to be publishing another book. So he was on last year as we talked about the book he co-wrote with James Warda, but now he's releasing a passion project of his own all about the themed entertainment industry. So we wanted him to come back on and talk a little bit about that because if our listeners know, we love the detail. We love all of that. So, Theron, thank you so much for being here with us today. We definitely appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. And as you guys know, love talking about things that I'm passionate about. And this is, you adequately described it. It's definitely a passion project.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as we jump into this, let's just talk a little bit about, just remind our audience a little bit about where your expertise lies in the themed entertainment industry. Why are you the one writing this book?
Well, it's a good question. Well, I have spent probably the last 30, I think it's 33. I always say 30 plus because I start to lose count when you get this age in this industry. Started in film and moved into the themed experience design industry where you get to build theme parks and hotels and ships and crazy things like attractions, and you get to work all over the world. So it's been a pretty amazing career. Got to do a lot of really interesting things, a lot of really hard things. Spent some time with Universal Studios at the very beginning of my career, and then really found a home at Walt Disney Imagineering, and that's where I spent 23 years of my career there. And as you guys know, I know you're really big fans. Had the opportunity to work on some really neat things while I was there. So there were so many people in my life who encouraged me to capture what I know so that the next generation can benefit from the experiences. And those are not just the fluff and all the good things, but the difficult things, the things that were hard, and places maybe where you could have done better. And passing that along, as I was encouraged, could really be helpful to others. So I looked at that for a while, and my friends and family got around and said, "Look, you really need to do this." So that was how I started this off, and here we are, 300 and some odd pages later, and we've got a book.
Yeah, I was looking at your website a little earlier today, and it looks like a super interesting book. So is the audience intended to be people that want to be in the themed entertainment industry, or do you think the audience is a little bit broader than that?
I think it's a pretty broad audience. Now, I'll say all of this meaning to be objective, not trying to prescribe who should purchase, but I think it's obvious that the next generation would be very interested in this. I mean, I would love to catch high schoolers who just have a super big passion for the themed entertainment industry, and they're thinking, I'm not quite sure, how should I approach this? What should I do? Engineering? Should I be an architect? Could I be a creative director? What should I do? So those next generation individuals, be they a student or not, who are really aspiring to be in the industry, obviously this book is made for them. But I also believe very strongly in that seasoned professional who's maybe worked in the industry a while and is thinking, gosh, I'd like to make a move. I'd like to, adapt my skills and not change careers, but what else is there? Are there parallel roles that I could take on with the experience that I have? Or, what is beyond themed entertainment? Is there another, what can I do with all these skills? So I believe that that's a reader that would really benefit from the book as well.
Okay.
Another group I think that could benefit greatly is educators. You have to remember that there are quite a few universities that now offer degree programs and certificate programs in themed entertainment. It's labeled differently at all the different universities, but that's basically the industry that they educate and offer degrees from. And it's not like literature or mathematics or chemistry where there's a set kind of approved curriculum. These educators are curating their own materials, using their own experience, and offering these students, a real slice of not just academic theory, but application. So I hope that this book is it's designed and created to really showcase and illustrate what the industry is like, what it takes to work in the industry, teamwork. What is a project? How do you do a project? What are all of the steps? What do you do after the industry? Really, really aggregate detail, which to all of my research shows that there isn't a book like that on the market. And then the last group would be fans. I think there are fans who don't necessarily need to know how, but they want to know how. How is this done? Give me the nitty gritty. I love the Imagineering books. I love what Marty wrote, and those are fabulous, but there's no how-to there. And so I think that's the differentiation for my book, and I think those are some groups that would really enjoy it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And as you were talking about those different audiences, we already have our copy pre-ordered, so I don't when does it release? When does it officially come out?
It comes out in the spring. So
Okay.
my publisher and I are arm wrestling on the exact month, but yeah, it'll be out in the springtime.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, we are the fans that already have our copy ordered for sure. But as you
Awesome.
were mentioning educators, I started to think too. I think I've mentioned to you before that the industry I'm in is adult education for a
Oh,
large
awesome.
insurance company.
Yes.
So, like as you're talking about educators, a lot of what I do is building storytelling and sort of painting a picture for folks on how to
Mm.
learn something new. And I'm wondering if I'm not going to be able to pick up some tips and tricks in that way too.
Well, I really hope so. I think that that there is, it's probably not a mainstream readers or mainstream individuals who will purchase the book, but I really do think that there's a lot in the book that connects a brand's story with an audience, right? There's, if you look at the book, really chapter 8 is going beyond themed entertainment, and that literally is lessons out of my own life, coming from being a senior corporate executive at a legacy brand, transitioning out to start my own company. And one of the biggest things I had to ask myself is, and do this honestly, is what I did, is it valuable anywhere else other than theme parks? You know, it's an honest question. Do I need to go sell insurance? Do I need to be a business person? You know, what I know and what I've learned, can I use it anywhere else? And that kind of cathartic exercise really showed me that there isn't too many segments of the global economy that's not interested in fundamentally and in a passionate way affecting their customer's heart and connecting them emotionally with their brand. There's not too many CFOs or CEOs in the world that would say, "Nah, I don't want to connect deeper with my customer." So there's quite a lot in the book that demonstrates how to do that. The power of storytelling in business is a big section in the book, and what it means for businesses and how it can differentiate, how you can really build brand equity and use that emotional connection with customers to turn them into audience members. Because last time I checked, if you look at a demographic of customer group, you can't really define them as fans, but you can
Right.
define audience members as fans, right? Those are the folks that sleep outside of the Apple store when the new phones come out, right? So I don't think there's too many brands or companies on earth that don't want that kind of a connection with their customers. And I don't think there's too many companies on earth that wouldn't want a deeper connection with their employees, right? It's on either side of that line. You can't really, your brand ambassadors, right? Those frontline employees, if they're not really passionate about your brand, it's going to be difficult for them to communicate that to customers.
Right.
So I think there's a lot in there, in my book, for professionals who are in the industry and want to leverage some of those truths for their own companies.
Awesome.
So tell us a little bit about your history. What sparked your interest or your passion for themed entertainment?
Awesome. I think we may have talked about this a little bit previously, but I'm happy to say it. For me, it was the love of the movies. Star Wars came out in 1977. I was 10. I went to the movies. I fell in love. It's such a different method for storytelling on film, and George he just completely changed it. So for me, it was like, I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do with my life. And so I pursued a vision, a goal to be in film, not in front of the camera, but on the back, on the other side of the camera, the background, really making these things happen. And when I was a teenager, somebody gifted me the Industrial Light and Magic book, and that was like the world opened, right? Every page I had post-it notes and underlined, and I got Joe Johnson's sketchbook for Star Wars, which is out of print now, and every single drawing I've traced over 1,000 times. So you open the page now, and every drawing has got ridges on it because I put trace paper on as a kid. So that's kind of how my passion for telling stories in a themed and kind of immersive environment happened. Of course, back then I couldn't have described it that way. I just now, hindsight, looking back, I was never happy in art class because no matter how good I could paint the portrait, the image, the world, I couldn't go inside of it, and I couldn't invite others there. So that was a dissatisfaction, and I needed more. And when I got into film, and I spent a few years doing this, and it was wonderful, but the world that we built, the set, the location, all of the amazing stuff that we built, only the people that were there shooting the movie actually got to see that. The audience only saw what the director wanted them to out of the 35 millimeter lens. So it still felt restrictive to me. Only theme parks, only those larger than life storyscapes, right? Worlds was really the only place I felt like you could build a world and invite millions of people to come and be the hero of their own story.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I like the way you said that about like the director sees what you see what the director wants you to see, and
Right.
we've commented a couple times, and you obviously know this, but like even on Spaceship Earth where they rotate the vehicles, or the haunted mansion where they rotate the vehicle to say
Yeah.
this is where we want you to look, but it's still so much more immersive than if we were watching that on TV or
Right.
in a movie theater, that kind of thing. It's amazing how much like your creative influence goes into, and probably a lot of that movie making background goes into how people do experience that. Could you talk a little
Right.
bit about that creative process?
Absolutely. I would actually, I would love to tell all of your listeners and explain how smart I was to start off in film, because that's where all the original Imagineers start. But look, folks, I didn't. I was just a passion. In fact, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I've always been embarrassed to say I didn't even know about Imagineering. I was in the film industry and was just doing my thing. I did some work for Universal Studios where I was led the project that built all the artificial rock work around the lagoon in the Studios Park in Orlando. That was really my first rockwork job in the theme park. And then a friend of mine who Joel Torme, who you may know, was left that job, went to Paris and started working, and then called me. And then that was kind of my first job for Disney. So I quite literally wasn't the kid that had the posters on the wall and was my resume at Imagineering for years and years, and it just kind of happened and came together. And I'm sure there's listeners that are like, mine's been there for 10 years and never
Right.
call me back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know, and being in the right place at the right time, right?
That's true. It's so true. The experience that I've had since I did it quite a bit at Disney, but since I left, I spent a lot more time with universities and with students, and the graduate students doing their master thesis, and just it was a really nice time to spend with students. And what I came to realize is this industry is so complex. There's so many things that are very difficult to teach, and the universities do a very good job hitting on some of the big things, but they missed a lot of the smaller things. And so that was another kind of force that pressured me myself into this needs to be captured, this needs to be told to people, so that they're prepared. I gave the example the other night. I was invited to give the convocation speech at University of Central Florida. They had a group of students who are graduating in the I'm sorry, it's not University of Central Florida, University of Florida, the City Lab here in Orlando. And there was several students who were graduating, and I basically described my entrance to Imagineering as like you were sitting on an airplane and the flight attendant walks up to you and hands you an armload of material, fabric, opens the door and kicks you out, and you need to stitch and sew your parachute on the way down. And that was really my entrance into Imagineering. No instruction manuals, no shadows, no apprentice programs. It was, now you're in it and you got to figure it out.
Yeah, again, like you tell that the way you use that anecdote to tell like how you started in Imagineering. I think about that with a lot of those original Imagineers too. Like that
Right.
entire unit of Disney is, you don't know what comes next. You have to create what
Yeah.
comes next. And there's a
Right.
lot of unknown with that. Those of us that don't deal well with unknown probably struggle in an
True.
environment like that, right? So
True.
I think that's super interesting.
And I think
Absolutely.
there's the added pressure of
if something that you need doesn't exist, you have to figure out how to invent it.
Right. It is very much an invention mindset, but it's also a business. So the challenge is there are priorities. There are spaces and times and opportunities for invention and for uniqueness, and when that budget exists and the client happens to have a real hunger for it, but that same client may want something different the next time. We've got this IP, we want this safe things, we want to mitigate risk. And so the industry, and this is part of the reason why I love it, is it's always changing. It's always changing. You could do a water park one day, a hotel the next day, a casino not next day, next year, right? The next project, a ship, and you're constantly doing different things and working with all kinds of different specialists. And some people that might, be the mad world scenario, but for folks like me, we love that. We eat it up.
Very
Yeah, that's
cool.
awesome.
So, excuse me, with all of your experiences and adventures and all of the huge projects that you've worked on that have touched so many people's lives, how did you, I guess, disseminate all of that and put that along with your insights together and make a book out of it?
It's good. I think what you're saying is, how come it's not 1,000 pages?
Right, exactly.
Because it probably should be.
Well, I appreciate that. My approach was that, and I got a lot of offers, right? People reached out to me and said, with your place at Disney, it's time to write a memoir and tell your story. And I, just to be honest, I just didn't feel, it just wasn't the right time for me, and it just didn't feel right. I felt like I had so much to explain and so much to teach, and then just my sampling from universities all the way from Hong Kong, California, just many different universities, and kind of sampling those programs and what was being taught. I just felt like there needed to be more of an explanation, a guide, a handbook, something that you could really look at, something that was synchronous, so you could read it from cover to cover and it would build on itself, or something that was completely asynchronous and I need to have something on teams. What's the best way to work together? And you peel the book open to the chapter on teamwork, and you have that sprinkled amongst all of the instruction and information is literally stories that I use to illustrate, not just for myself. I reached out to some trusted colleagues and friends all over the world and asked them if they'd be interested in being a contributing author to the work. Now, they're not whole chapters, they're segments, but they're dispersed all throughout the book, more than a dozen. And what I'm really happy about that is, metaphorically, I'm always representing that this industry cannot get done without collaborative teamwork, right? It won't work. So to have all of these other individuals representing their fields, their expertise, their stories, combined with mine, I think really embodies that in the book itself. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you just mentioned something that I'd like you to dig into a little bit deeper. The
Sure.
the collaboration aspect. So you mentioned business. There's always a budget, there's always timelines, but then you're also working with creative people that kind of hate deadlines and hate budgets and that kind of thing. So
Yep.
how in the themed entertainment industry do you have all of that come together to create something magnificent?
I try in the book. I try to very hard to represent the different categories of disciplines that you would find on a project. And nobody, this didn't come from Disney. It's just my take of how to take this big, wacky ball of hair, right? That's all tangled up, and how do we untangle it and really begin to talk about it in a way that highlights the individual expertise of all of these different categories and disciplines and all of the individual roles that people have on projects. Imagineering is fond of saying that they have over 140 different disciplines working within their brand. And it's true. It's extremely complex and runs from artists to scientists. So the question that you're asking, Scott, is how does everybody work together? So
Hmm.
the approach that I took was to try to say, look, you've got a creative group, you've got a design group, you've got a delivery group, and each one of those occupy the core positions of every project. You have additional specialty groups like ride design and show and live entertainment, but they may not be on every project. So when you look at the core elements, that's what you have: creative design, delivery, and then another group I just called administration, which they're the contract writers, the finance people, the risk mitigators, the schedulers, the estimators, all full industries of their own. But I just kind of gathered them under that one group of administration. But if you just compare them side by side, creative, for example, right? The way that they get the job done, the way that what they're hired to do is to dream big, to take risks, right? Push the boundaries. Creatively, you work in a non-linear fashion. So remember from chemistry class, that electron cloud around the nucleus. That's how I visualize my creative brothers and sisters and how we process that. Well, just compare that to design, right? Design forms a bridge between creative and the delivery team, project managers, construction managers. And the design team has to take all of that nonlinear vision and actually document it so it can be built. But the design folks have to be licensed. They have to design according to a building code. They can only make concrete do so many different things. They don't really dream big. Sorry for architects and engineers. It's not meant to be a cut down. You can only dream as big as what your scope and trade and how you've been educated really allow you to dream. And it's through that amazing collaboration between creative and design that you actually create more. And that team thinks linearly, right? They have to avoid risk. And it's the same with delivery. So you have these three primary categories of disciplines that are working on every project, and they're, in a very real sense, diametrically opposed to each other. But yet they all have to work together. So what I always like to encourage is there's going to be tension. Just keep the tension positive. Use that tension like a wound spring to propel the project forward, and don't hate the differences. Embrace the differences, and let them create solutions that can't be found anywhere else.
Yeah, it's such good advice. I kind of live that even within my corporate Fortune 500 insurance job. Tension's not a bad thing. It's
Yeah.
that there's people that their job is to keep you out of trouble. So let them do
Right.
their job. But
Right.
you also want to push back on them saying, how much trouble am I really going to get into if I do that?
Right. That's
And
right.
I think that's such an interesting dichotomy of how that all works together. And I love that tension is important. It really
It
is.
It really is. And the idea of innovation, I'll just give you another quick example. There's every company wants to be innovative. We want to be innovative. And when a company will hire me, I'll come in and talk to them about innovation to help their team or whatever. The very first thing I mention is, look, your C-suite needs to give you the room to fail. You have to have the room to take risks, managed risks, and you need to define that. But if you don't take risks and your company doesn't have a culture of taking risks, you'll never innovate. It's just, you'll never innovate. If you try something and you fail within the realm of acceptable failure and you get your head bashed in, you're never going to try that again, and therefore you won't ever innovate. A lot of companies, especially CFOs, don't like to hear that because they're so focused on the bottom line. But the reality is you cannot differentiate. You cannot create something like only in the world or first in the world. And you can't innovate unless you establish a culture of disciplined risk taking.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Along those lines, so talking of sort of moving along the innovation lines, are there any innovations in themed entertainment, like short, mid, long term, that you're super excited about?
As an industry, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure. I think that the industry itself is very good. Let's categorize this as maybe short and medium term
Hmm.
at innovations and iterations in the ride design space, simulation, coaster type rides, every kind of ride system. I think the industry is very good at those step changes. Next year at IAPA, you're going to see something you didn't see last year. Six Flags is going to come out with a new kind of coaster, or Intamin or whatever that you didn't see, and Pro Slide is going to come out with a new kind of thing for a water park, and that's great. That's important. 100% needed, no doubt. I also think in that timeline, that sort of short to medium term, we also see quite a lot of, again, step changes in control systems, in projection, in special effects, in lighting, in animatronics, robotics. I think there's a whole industry that takes those changes and they have a life at making those changes, and many companies benefit from that. The long term things that I'm the most excited about is convergence of different industries. I've talked about this a lot, and I've actually in my career have really been blessed enough to work on some projects post Disney where we really got to explore this in a very detailed way. But I really believe that the future of entertainment is going to be a combination of gaming, everything that exists for gaming. It could be VR, probably more likely AR, um, uh, gamification, story driven, PvP, PvE, all of those aspects, esports versus console, all the gaming world. I think that really should be and will be mashed up with everything location based entertainment, right? So, a destination like Disney World, where you've got a physical place that you walk into that's got restaurants and it's day and it's night and it's got indoor spaces and outdoor spaces and animals and I think that there's an opportunity to converge many different industries and technologies, and the benefit I think is going to be a much deeper, richer, and a wider variety of experiences for audiences. That's just my take. It could be what I really want to see, but what I see in the industry is inklings of this happening.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as you were talking, it popped into my head. We were watching one of those Imagineer stories on Disney Plus or on the Imagineering YouTube channel about the Imagineer Lanny Smoot,
Mm.
and
Lanny's great.
yeah, he's phenomenal. I want to meet that man at some point in my life.
Yeah,
He's amazing.
he's such a great
Um,
guy. The first time you meet him, you're like, this guy could just be a good friend. He's really good. He's really cool.
that's so amazing. But like they were talking about that floor that he's inventing, where you can walk on it forever and never move. And the
Yeah,
first thing that popped into my head was sort of along the same line of Disney could print money if they could sell those mats and sell people a subscription to Disney so they could go whenever they wanted
yeah,
and just do it in the perfect their basement wherever they were. They could walk
yeah.
through Disney World and take the same number of steps that you would have to take, and I don't think people would want to pay to wait in lines if they're in their basement, but I think you get where I'm going there, that
Yeah,
convergence of the VR and the physical and all of that
yeah.
coming together is just so intriguing to me as we look towards the future.
Yes, yeah. I think what's interesting is, we now see some media systems that have even from 5 years ago are so vastly improved. Unreal Engine, what is it at 5 now? I think is just unbelievable. It renders in real time, so and it looks 100% realistic. And then you have these area, large spaces like the volume that was used for the Mandalorian, very similar to the technology Imagineering uses to realize spaces. But putting that kind of a technology, linking it with artificial intelligence and machine learning into an environment with some of the tech that you're talking about, I mean, you could instantly see how that could really change the game in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly.
Let's go.
Exactly. Exactly. So, as we're talking about more insights and that kind of thing, bringing us back to the book just a little bit, and I know you probably discussed this in the book, but if we have anybody that's a newcomer or somebody that wants to maybe get into the themed entertainment industry, what's one piece of advice you want to share with them on our show that might be a good way for them to kind of break into the industry?
Excellent. Well, I will say that my book is divided into 3 segments, 3 chapters each. The first segment is called Foundations and People, and it literally is the very first chapter is what is themed entertainment, right? It's the foundations, and it just goes through everything, the people, who's the right kind of people to work in the industry, who are these crazies that are in there. The middle segment is literally all about the process. What do you do before the project even begins, all the way through all of the processes, blue sky, the whole thing, all the way through to what happens after the project's done. There's still work to be done after the project is turned over. And then the last chapter is literally, or the last segment is about the story of you, the reader. It's how do you understand what to do beyond themed entertainment. A whole chapter on the fact that the industry is global, and that affects how you work. Believe me, if you're in one country where you grew up and you travel to another country to work in this industry, it's a way more than just language. How do you tell relevant stories in another culture? And then the last chapter, chapter 9, is all about how do you take the entire book and use that to lay out this map of the industry and all the different components to evaluate yourself, where you fit. So that's how the book progresses. So what I would tell a reader is, shameless plug, get the book, because it'll take you through the whole piece. But one thing I would say is, I run into a lot of people, and I'll say creatives because I'm one, so I can say this, and the creative people who have such an aspiration and a passion to be in the industry, they often think to themselves, "This is my own personal project, right? And I get to bring my dream to life." And what they forget is that every single role in this whole entire industry, you'll always be working for a client, always. Um, if you want to produce art and hang it in a gallery, that's a totally different job. So I do that not to be a downer, but to establish, for no matter what your role is, that when you come into the industry, you're going to be working for a client. That client needs a business solution. And that business solution should be story driven, right? Story is not just something you paint on your idea once you have it all done. What I teach is that my practice is called narrative experience design. And what I do is take the brand, the audience, and the business objectives from a client, and then I fabricate and create a story that encapsulates those 3 things. And then that becomes the actual mechanism that delivers the whole project. So it delivers on their brand equity. It delivers on their revenue goals. It delivers on expanding their audience. So I would want listeners of your show who are aspiring to move into this industry to understand you're always working for a client, and that, especially for creatives, you need to be comfortable with the idea, with the concept of ideas on demand. Yes, you do feel like a vending machine, but if you've spent, and this has happened to me, a month preparing a big pitch, you have all the boards done, you've got all the artwork done, you're meeting with the senior executives of your client, and you go through the whole thing, and the client says, "Yeah, I mean, I'm just not feeling it. It's just we're not there yet." If you're completely bought into, sold out on, fallen completely head over heels in love with those ideas, you won't be any good to the client to come up with new ideas. You'll repackage your old idea and pitch it back to them on the next one, which doesn't doesn't bode very well, right? So, anyways, those are the things that I would want to say. Everybody in the industry is a part of telling stories. It doesn't matter if you're in finance, project management, architecture, creative direction. Everybody is a part of telling the story, and their input is needed, right? Joe Rohde's idea for Animal Kingdom didn't look the same when the Animal Kingdom opened from when he first pitched it, because there were hundreds and hundreds of people that gave their input, that gave their blood, sweat, and tears, that contributed and made that idea even better when it opened. So I don't know. Those are a few things. I could go on, so I'll stop.
So how do you, when you have that brilliant idea that your client says, it's just not my thing, how do you internally let go of that? What's your process to say, okay, I'm going to forget about that even though I think it's the right thing for them, and move on to something different so I can meet their need even if I don't think it's the best for them?
I fall back on the process, and I think that's why what I try to instruct, and obviously what the book represents, is a very disciplined approach to creative development. That is not much to people's chagrin. It's not a bunch of people sitting around Hawaiian shirts, straw hats, and playing with Play-Doh and listening to, 80s music. As cool as that is and as fun as it is, it's a total and complete waste unless you have guiding principles, and that all of that creative power is harnessed and you're moving in a specific direction. So I think that's what's really important. Once you do that, you're generating concepts, even big blue sky concepts, that are specifically directed at the client's needs. It would be terrible. Like, I remember when we were doing initial blue sky work for the ships, for the new Triton class ships, right? This was years and years ago when I was leading the Disney Cruise Line, and we did multiple blue sky sessions, and before we went in, we had a whole entire presentation where we basically gauged everybody. Here's what we're on a ship, here's what we're doing, and put the boundaries out there. You'd still get these crazy ideas like, hey, what if we did a linear induction motor over the side, and we could feel like people are launching. That's the launch for California Screamin' and Rock and Roller Coaster, is a limb magnetic. It's like 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. So, great idea, probably not appropriate for a ship, right? So that's what and once you build that kind of disciplined process for solutioneering, right? You're creating solutions for the client. If the one idea that you have that addresses or serves as a solution for one of their problems, if that doesn't work, well, you've already built an entire structure that you can go back and say, how can we repurpose this solution in a different way? Can we, just bail on that solution and have another solution, another concept that solves that problem? Remember, I said the first thing that you do as a team is you understand the client's brand, and that's inside and out. What is their brand? What do they represent? What's their core why? Understand their audience. Like Disney, it's 4 years old to 94 years old. It's a huge demographic. And what's their business objectives with this particular project? Are they growing the teen market? Is it thrill? Is it, a museum at one of the locations around the World Showcase at Epcot? If you understand all of those things, your solutions will be pinpointed, and then your ideas to deliver those solutions, there's a million different ways to do it. So you just go back, dial it back in, and get creative and get focused on that solution.
Okay.
So
hopefully that wasn't too much.
No,
that was
not
great.
at all. That was awesome.
Let me ask you this. So if you were the client and you were approaching a company about an idea or a story that you wanted to tell, what would that story be, and what would it look like?
Story I would want to tell. Wow. Nobody would want to work with me if I was a client, because I know too much. It'd be way too difficult. Like builders that work for me, they hate it. It's because I know too much about it. So let's see. How can I answer this? I think I would talk in big generalities, right? If I wanted to create something in this industry, I would want to create an environment where visitors could escape and play. That's the primary desire for people is they want to play together as a group. They want to give themselves permission to play. And that oftentimes equates to a feeling of escape. I've escaped my world. I've escaped all the responsibilities of my world. And I get to kind of take this break and play and allow myself this opportunity. I would want to build a world that you as a visitor, you would suspend your disbelief. It would feel so real, and the way that you enter your arrival sequence, your whole journey, would reinforce this fact that you are actually in another world, and that's called suspension of disbelief. So those are the things that are important for me. What you do when you got there, I mean, we can brainstorm that, but I think that's the most important thing. Is Sorry again, this is a shameless plug, but creating memorable worlds, right? That's what we do, and that's what I would want to do is create a place you could completely escape. It'd really be fun to be like a Westworld without all the violence and debauchery and everything, but a fully escaped in an impossibly large world where you can, be a character and act out an actual mission or something. I think that would be amazing.
So let me expand on Candice's question just a little bit. If Disney or Universal came to you and said, you have an unlimited budget, do you have it? Like, we talk an awful lot on our show of, we would love to see this in the parks. We would love to do this. If Disney or Universal came to you and said, unlimited budget, build something for us, what would you build?
Well, first, and this is going to sound persnickety, I wouldn't want an unlimited budget because I know we'd never deliver, right? It's the pressure of the budget actually gives you the best result. The pressure of the schedule, as long as they're reasonable, gives you the best result, right? You can't have a Yugo budget and expect a Mercedes experience. It just doesn't work that way. If you have a Yugo budget and you want a Yugo, great, we're going to build that for you. Do they even have Yugos anymore?
I think so. I don't know that they sell them here, but
first thing that came to my mind. Well, look, if a client came to me and said that, we love what you do, tell us what to do, I would still have a whole bunch of questions for them. I would still want to know, what is your brand? I can't just. It's like Marty Sklar said, right? The blank piece of paper can be the scariest thing because it's blank, but it's also the most exciting thing because it's blank. There's nothing on it. You get to start, and as right as he was, you also need to have guidelines. You need to know: is this in Epcot? Is it in Universal Studios, Islands of Adventure? Is it in Osaka? Is it in Saudi Arabia? I need to have some information because I won't be successful unless I have answers to some of those questions. And then I can create the best possible experience that achieves those objectives. So that's probably why there were people I didn't get along with very well at Imagineering. Got accused of being concerned about money too much as a creative, but that was just my driving passion. Is with open-ended schedule, open-ended budgets. Human nature is you would never deliver, and it would never be on time, and you just wouldn't perform without that pressure. So building the guidelines for creative, even at a blue sky level, is so important. That's why I really teach that is extrapolate all that you can, very disciplined fashion from the client, build that guideline within which that you're going to create and solution for them, and then set about the creation of that. That doesn't put a cap on your imagination. In fact, it's like putting a bridle in a horse, right? You have all that power, 1,500-pound animal or whatever it is, that can run 30 miles an hour and jump over, obstacles. Without that bridle, you're flying off the back, right? You can't steer that thing. It's all torque and no, what do they say? All paddle and all paddle and no rudder, I think is the term. In Texas, they say all hat and no cattle. So that's what you don't want, right? You need to be focused so that you can deliver something amazing.
That's amazing. And I think sometimes when we're dreaming, even on our podcast, when we're like, we'd love to see this, Like we forget that business side as fans. Like, well, honestly, as fans, we don't care about the business side. We just want
Sure.
what we want, right? That's
I
Sure,
mean, we're
sure.
willing to pay for it, so
right.
it is what it is. But
Exactly. We'll pay to go.
Right.
right,
We'll pay our $180 to get into the park, whatever.
no worries.
Still
Right.
good
It's
for
fine.
us.
I want it safe. I want it reliable. When I get there, I want the people to be nice to me. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah,
you know,
I want it
and I want it
clean.
to, yeah, I want it to blow my gray matter out of my ears. Yeah, that's what I
Yep.
want. I want it to be crazy good. Yeah,
Yeah, so we just a couple more questions, Theron, and then we'll let you
sure.
get out of here. Are there any lessons, like, and I'm sure this, don't steal from your book too much, or if you want to, you can. Are there any lessons that from your life or from your career in themed entertainment that have really influenced who you've become today and how you've the company you run and the book you're writing? What are maybe one or two of those things that really from your past have influenced you greatly?
Uh, Thanks for that. It's such a great question. I think I have two good answers, I hope. One would be that I wouldn't be the person that I am professionally if I didn't really listen to a lot of different people. I have often said, and I've actually captured it in my book, that I believe our superpower is the ability to actively listen. You can probably remember in your mind, if I tell you right now, a conversation that you had with somebody and you didn't really feel like it was a conversation two-way. You felt like the individual you were speaking with was just waiting for you to stop so that they could say what they had in their mind. That's not really a conversation. It's certainly not active listening. So I think that, and that's just the way that I was raised and the way that I was wired. And I'm so grateful because I listened to, the guys that delivered the mail to our trailer, our office trailer at Imagineering for decades, right? Years. And, listen to the people who were custodials, who emptied the garbage and kept the place clean, and just taking a few minutes and speaking with those folks all the way through listening to Bob Iger talk about his yacht. Those interactions are critical to building your knowledge base, building your expertise. True, but they're also really important to inspire you. And you can't possibly be successful, I don't think, in life in general, but specifically in this industry, you cannot be successful unless you feel inspired and the work that you do has meaning. So that'd be the first thing I'd say. Second thing, that's kind of on the professional side. On the personal side, I would say that I have had a lot of times where I was successful balancing my work and my life, and I've had quite a few times where I was unsuccessful balancing my work and my personal life. And after 30 plus years, I feel like I've achieved a good place. Being a solopreneur is definitely given me a lot of freedoms. Now, if I work 70 hours a week, it's for me. It's not for anybody else, including a mouse. And so I think that is so important because you can't possibly be good in your professional life if your personal life is kind of in a shambles, right? The people that care for you and support you, man, they're like oxygen pumping into you. And so protecting those relationships and balancing them out, giving them time as well as your professional life is just really, really important. I don't think anybody's perfect at balancing this. I know I'm sure not, but I sure feel like I'm doing a better job now after failing at it in the past. So those are the two things I would say.
Yeah, that's such great advice. You maybe didn't even mean it as advice, but I took it as advice. That was just fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
We learn a lot from our failures. So if I can present a failure and somebody says, "Wow, I'm going to take that as advice," then it's like I'm so grateful because now you don't have to go through that pain.
yeah. So what is a failure that you've had that really sort of changed your perspective?
I would say a personal failure in the vein of what I was just talking about is I got to a point in my career where I was so busy. And I think the reason is because I think most of us in this industry who work at any level, we're so passionate about it. We love it so much. And in fact, the work itself has meaning, right? I mean, you spend 3 to 5 years on something, blood, sweat, and tears, overnights, sleeping under your desk, all this stuff. And you open it up and you see millions of people laughing and loving it and transformed. I mean, that work has meaning, and it feels so right to be a part of that. And you've collaborated with people, arm in arm, 100 people wide, and as Craig Russell says, walk through any wall. And I love that analogy. But the part of the problem with that is that it can draw you off balance. So I would say that there were times in my life where I was overcommitted to work, and I was cashing checks, as it were, from my family without redepositing into that account, and that causes some stress. And so through those moments of failure, recognizing that, listening, and saying, "Whoa, I can do better. I can be better," and then making those adjustments, and it certainly helps me to be a better creative force. Right, the client doesn't want to hear, well, I haven't gone out with my wife, and I'm kind of grumpy, and they don't care. They're paying you, and they need an idea, and they need that idea now.
Right.
So to be in the best possible shape and to practice at a flow state, which I love, it's best to have your house in order, and to really kind of have those personal relationships balanced with your professional. That would be my example of where I've lost it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that so much. So I think time for one more question probably, and then we wrap up. Okay.
Sure.
So I think let's do this. Let's have kind of a lighthearted question. What's your favorite themed experience that you didn't create?
Wow, long list. Off the top of my head, it maybe sounds like a cop out, but I'll say Rise of the Resistance. Absolutely stunning. I was around the team in California because our offices of where we were, leading the cruise group and everything were pretty close. So we spent time beside each other. Hey, but I never was into it at all. I didn't really see anything. I wasn't a part of any of the pitches. So physically going through and experiencing that, and being a huge Star Wars fan, blew my mind. I was so happy and excited with all the decisions that they made, and I just loved it.
Yeah. I've told Candice this before. I think that attraction is perfect from start to finish.
Absolutely. Even from
Yep.
the queue line.
Yeah, queue line
Yeah.
all the way through the end of it is just fantastic.
And
Yeah.
when we were there in early December, we noticed, like, even through the queue line, the sounds and everything are very, very intentional. And it makes you
Yeah.
feel a certain kind of way as you're moving through. And then, like, the floors change and the surroundings change. And, like, it just amazes me how much
Yeah.
detail and how much thought and how much focus and all of that gets considered to make this beautiful, beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And when you come from the inside and you know what it takes to deliver something like that, it's just that for me, it's an extra level of kudos to get through what I know was difficult political, difficult budgetary, difficult schedule, first in the world kind of technologies, or all of that was really challenging, I'm sure. And, when you're on a project, you have to, as a team, make decisions. And the final project that you deliver, the attraction, theme park, whatever, is the sum total of all of those compromises and decisions that you've made with operations and maintenance and everybody else. And so when it turns out really good, you're like, yes, everybody made all the right decisions and they handled that so well. And it's an amazing testament to the team that delivered that, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so let's end with a little bit of a plug. So we know the company you started is the Designers Creative Studio.
Right.
You can Google that, I'm sure, but let's plug the name of the book, where people can go find it, and anything else that you want to tell the audience about.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the opportunity. As you said, Scott, the name of my company is the Designers Creative Studio. I have a website that people might be interested in. It's kind of educational, talking a lot about narrative experience design. There's I have a big media archive there. Almost every interview and podcasts and print and all that stuff is there if people are just interested in that. A bunch of examples of my work since leaving Disney. So you could find a lot of interesting things there. For the book itself, I created a whole separate website for the book. It's called creatingmemorableworlds.com. You can go there, really kind of discover a lot about the book, and you can pre-order from there. And the other thing that I'm really excited to announce is, and I think you guys know this, I just launched my own podcast. I wasn't sure I was going to do it, and I put it off for quite a while, but again, very good group of friends who encouraged me that this would be a right platform. So it's called the League of Extraordinary Storytellers. And my objective with this podcast is to bring on individuals whose expertise is very different from my own in the industry, so that we can really showcase how very different people work together to deliver these kind of amazing worlds. So I just dropped my first episode last month. I'm working on my next episode for January, and it's really fun. So people can, I'm going to launch that website as well. That'll be the League of Extraordinary Storytellers. Also, you can find.
Okay. Yeah, and we will put links to all of those things in the show notes when this releases. This episode will probably be our second one after the season starts, so probably the second week of February is when this one will probably release for us. But we'll make sure we put all of those links and all of that kind of stuff in our show notes so people can find you easily.
Excellent.
Thank you, Theron. We always love our
Thank
conversations. This is fantastic. We appreciate your time. And we're going to get you back on one of these days to talk to us about the cruise line, one of our favorite Disney experiences.
Certainly.
Just have you tell us all about the cruise line at some point, too.
No problem. My pleasure, guys. Thanks so much for the invitation. You guys are great hosts and love being a part of your production.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And remember, everyone, there is a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
And we'll see you real soon.